In a world where progress never sleeps, one company stands out as the driving force behind infrastructure and energy solutions. Introducing our fuel company and cement producer, where excellence meets efficiency. Jah Oil. The company have 30 filling stations across the country that are all operating, which includes the recently completed Yarambamba and Old Yundum filling stations. And our rates are relatively cheaper than anyone else across the country. Along the years, Jah Oil introduces importation and distribution of cement in their line of business to diversify and strengthen their operations. Are you a cement retailer? At the moment, Jah Oil is the biggest producer and distributor of cement in the country with the most competitive prices in the market. With a focus on sustainability and innovation, we are paving the way for a greener, stronger future. Trust in us to fuel your projects and lay the groundwork for success. We currently produce over 25,200,000 bags per year. As the largest cement producer in the country, Jah Oil also targets to export cement to the neighboring countries like Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, and others. Join us on our journey to shape a world where every drop of fuel and every bag of cement makes a difference. Together, we can build a brighter tomorrow.
Father Sean is with me. Father Sean, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me, Peter. It's a pleasure.
You know, you keep going and coming. I mean, when Kizito got rid of you, how many years ago we thought that was it? I mean, he was never going to come back to this country. But we keep seeing you. You know, what keeps drawing you back to the Gambia?
I suppose it was the wonderful and life-enhancing experience that I had at Kizito. Just the building of a community there over the years, and then the outreach that we had to other places like Mariamakunda, where we have an ongoing school project for the last 20 years. And then other work that I've kind of jumped into with, at the moment, doing a little bit of volunteering with Caritas for the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Let me just say that for many years, Father Sean was the parish priest at St. Kizito's, which is where I worship, at Bakote. He literally built up the Bakote community. Every time you come back, do you get a sense of, you know, further growth, or do you feel something is missing?
Every time I come back and go to worship and pray with the community at Kizito, I'm encouraged by the growth, the development, the initiatives that have been taken. You said there that I built St. Kizito's. I always say that it was really a team effort, people like yourself and other people on committees and groups who gave tremendous hours of hard work to build that community there, that it became a community that maybe one of the very first, or one of the few first communities that became self-sufficient as a parish community in the Gambia.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And when you went back to Ireland, how easy was it, to settle back into, European life, Irish life per se?
Yeah, I suppose home is home, and I went back at a time when both my parents were alive and elderly. So having spent 16 years in West Africa here in the Gambia, it was good to be able to spend time and catch up with them. Ireland had moved on a lot, and it was like, I was in my head going back to what I left in 97, 98, but it had moved on tremendously. The church in Ireland, going back into a parish, it literally was like a culture shock. Moving from celebrating, I went from Bakote to Buyam, so I was at Buyam for 3 years, and moving from even Buyam, it's a small community of Christians at Buyam, back to Ireland, you see the huge age gap. Everybody in Ireland now, not everybody, but certainly 80% of my congregation at home now are my age, and I'm 61 or above.
Mm. And people say, priests are not just, spiritual leaders. They are also social workers. I mean, what social work do you engage in?
At home. In
Or
Ireland.
let's say while you were here in the Gambia,
No,
what social work were you,
okay,
were you engaged in?
What I've been doing for the past 2 weeks is I just returned yesterday from about 5 days over 2 weeks of trek throughout the country. From right up along the north bank from Barra to Farafeni and the south bank from Serekunda here to Basse. I was with Caritas. They invited me to join them to look at the Food for Education program that has been rolled out with the help of CRS here in the Gambia and the US Department of Agriculture with USAID. So
That must be in trouble now, given what Trump is doing in Washington with USAID.
I don't know enough about the intricacies of it or what's going on. That was my sense when I read the news as well. I'd hope it's not. The funding for this program seems to, I just Googled it before I came in here, it seems to be coming from the US Department of Agriculture, so maybe it is safe for the 5-year period.
Well, I hope it is. I mean, because there's a freeze on all foreign aid by the US government.
And it's an absolute freeze. And it impacts Ireland, not as much as Gambia, but it certainly impacts Ireland because Ireland was benefiting greatly in the peace process between Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland and the UK with millions and millions of dollars being inputted for industry, for education, for social stuff. But going back to what I was doing here, it was an eye-opening experience. It was at times very emotional, at times incredible to see the conditions that children are actually living in villages, in schools, and
you were more than, I mean, a religious father.
Yeah.
You actually took in children while you were at
Yes.
At St. Kizito's
Yes.
Bakote.
Yeah.
I mean, and put them in school,
Yeah.
paid for their school fees, literally
Yeah.
fathered them.
Yeah, we ran a school. We ran a sponsorship program for years that was supported by friends and colleagues back home in Ireland, and we offered education to those across the board who wanted to be educated or wanted help with their school fees and that, and that's why I suppose when I was speaking to school heads right across the country, it was encouraging to see that I'd say on average that the school population since the FFE program started in November, in a lot of schools here, I think, the school population has increased by probably about 15 to 20%. So it's bringing children back into schools. But what struck me was just and one teacher day before yesterday spoke to me about on the North Bank about the really poor groundnut crop, how it has impacted poverty and how that's impacting right down along the line to the children. So all I was doing was sitting in the back of the pickup, writing a few notes. I'm going to meet with the director of Caritas, Francis Mendy, maybe on Monday, and just go through that and see. There were certainly some things I will be bringing back and looking for a few quid from donors back home around looking at increasing the capacity of schools to have good kitchens, proper eating areas, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you spoke about your 61 years. Mm-hmm. The Gambia will officially be 60 on the 18th of this month in a few days' time. You interact with Gambians from all walks of life. I mean, when I mentioned your name, introducing you to the minister who just left here, he remembered you from somewhere. Probably you couldn't, but I guess he reminded you. The Gambians you talk to, I am sure some of them express hope about this country, but others also, despair. I mean, you go in and out. The Gambia of today compared to the Gambia that you lived in for 16 odd years, do you have a sense of advancement, economic advancement, structural advancement, or have we stagnated or regressed in certain areas?
I think looking around, and I was only saying, I've passed comment on this, the huge infrastructural development that's happening, the new highway, the number of new buildings, apartment blocks, and that kind of thing being built, hugely expensive. I looked at some of the end prices online for an apartment in some of the places, but that's all development. I think the cost of living crisis that just isn't affecting the Gambia, but it's across the world, but it has really impacted on people here. So I'd say there's a bit of a stagnation around that, and it's probably something that needs to be tackled and dealt with, because it without a raise in salaries and the constant increase in commodity, stable commodity prices, I feel that it will, like with any economy, it will drive it into maybe a severe recession. And how to deal with that, I suppose, is how does one deal with that is to maybe look at wages and look at...
Government has done that.
Okay.
Government has done that. There's at least a 70% increase in salaries for low income earners especially.
I'd be excited. I think I'm excited about the development that I see around the combos, but the North Bank especially, the vast tracts of land. And I was saying to the people who were on trek with me that imagine what it would be like if it was developed into actually working lands, cooperatives for villages that were supported with boreholes, with irrigation systems, with mechanization. To a greater degree than they are being supported with.
What the minister said, a short while ago, then would have encouraged you that these people that are going to Spain, as part of the circular migration agreement, the aim is they go to Spain, work on the farms, acquire, some degree of experience, come back here, at a time when government working with agriculture and the private sector would have also established farms, across the country, where they could then come and work on vegetables and all whatnot. So who knows? Maybe a regeneration of the North Bank region is about to happen.
Indeed, I suppose what government probably needs to do or is to help ones who do return on that circular migration project to capacitize them with the machines, because if you're going to produce lots of vegetables, and that it does need a lot of mechanization, and it needs lots of, obviously, water and that. About 2 years ago, I was coming back across on the ferry from Barra, having been up to visit one of our school projects at Kasewa, and I noticed a full truck of vegetables. And I remember saying to somebody with me, and I said, "Are they coming from the North Bank?" They said, "No, from Senegal."
From Senegal, yes.
So, to be able to produce that at home, and then to look at export markets into places like the minister was talking about, into Spain, into other parts of Africa, into Northern Africa, into Italy, France, Germany, Ireland, England, right across.
Mm-hmm. You worked with youths during your 16 years here, especially. I'm sure in Ireland, you continue to take an interest in developments back here in the Gambia, and you would have read about irregular migration a lot. I mean, the Gambia is usually up there, when irregular migration comes up. The lives you hear, perish trying to cross the Mediterranean. Coming back now, hearing about, the Spain Circular Migration Agreement, up to 10,000 people applying, for 50 opportunities in the first few days. I know unemployment, is a problem everywhere, but, the severity of the problem here.
The severity of unemployment here is not something of today, but when I was living here, it was the same issue, and it seems to continue. There is a serious skills shortage in many European countries, including our own, including Ireland, and we have agreements with a lot of Eastern countries for nurses, for doctors. My mum, before she passed recently,
Poland, Romania.
no, mostly India, the Philippines, but like all the nurses, certainly the majority of the nurses in the hospital were Filipino nurses. So there are excellent Gambian nurses. There are people being highly trained here in this country as nurses and doctors. And you made the point when interviewing Minister Diouf, it's, people will complain that it's a brain drain, but maybe it's not. Maybe you go, you get your experience, you bring in agriculture, in other areas, and you bring that experience back here to the Gambia and grow and develop that. And it helps to grow and develop the country. I have worked a little bit marginally, really, in some parts of Italy. I've met a few priests. I've met lots of Gambians who are just hanging around train stations.
In Ireland?
No, in Italy.
In Italy, okay.
And it's devastating for them. They, trying to get papers, change of political mindsets and governments in different parts of Europe. It's getting harder and harder. And just met a man, sat with a dad and a mum in the North Bank, I won't say where, and they're desperately trying to get their son back to Gambia because he's become very unwell in Italy. And he's just, we know where he is. We'll try and act on it when I go home. But the horror, the tragedy of that, the tragedy of having a son abroad, unwell, not able to look after himself anymore. And you know Europe as well as I know Europe, Peter, that, nobody will invite you to the bowl. No, nobody will invite you to eat.
Gambians are all over Europe. I'm sure they are in Ireland.
They're in Ireland. And
the few you meet there, I mean, I suppose, your connections to the Gambia would make you want to interact with them, know what their problems are.
We meet. There are very few Gambians in Ireland, but we met for independence last year. We hired a venue in Dublin, and we all gathered and ate Benachin and
Domoda.
It was Domoda and Benachin, and we had a great evening. There were about 5 or 6 of us who meet regularly at my house or at one of their homes, and we cook and chat and talk and keep in touch. They've done extremely well for themselves, extremely well. They've all high-powered jobs,
probably went to school first, acquired
absolutely.
a high degree of education.
Yeah, no, they did. Well, now one of them, I know 1 or 2 who started. I know one guy who started packing vegetables on a shelf for a major retailer, and he now manages one of their biggest stores in the country.
Oh, wow.
So he literally walked up the ranks, and great graft. You see, that's what I find with the Gambians that I know in Ireland. They've great graft. They really work hard, and they're very focused and dedicated, more so than the Irish at times.
Yeah, but the minister just lamented that some of the menial jobs a Gambian is willing to do, and for long hours, when they find themselves in Europe, they would want to do here, even if it was for more money.
No, they won't, and they'll go. It's like the Irish. Like we were exactly the same. We built New York, we built London, we built Chicago and Boston, Sydney. We went and we did all we shoveled concrete, we built roads, we were the labourers, the carpenters, the plumbers, the electricians. And now we won't do it.
And here's the journalist who is a priest. Father Sean, how would you like to wrap up this conversation?
Well, first of all, a very sincere thank you, Peter. I feel privileged to have been invited to such a very popular programme. To thank all at Kizito, at Buyam, at Kololi, all the places I was when I was here, for the great support. To thank Gambians for such a huge welcome. And to feel that when I step back into the country, it's like coming back home.
That's so lovely to hear. Father Sean, thank you so very much. Father Sean Devricks. That brings us to the end of our program for today and for the week. Have a very good weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday. And I can tell you already that on Monday, CD Cisse of NPP is going to be my guest.
In a world where progress never sleeps, one company stands out as the driving force behind infrastructure and energy solutions. Introducing our fuel company and cement producer, where excellence meets efficiency. Jah Oil. The company have 30 filling stations across the country that are all operating, which includes the recently completed Yarambamba and Old Yundum filling stations. And our rates are relatively cheaper than anyone else across the country. Along the years, Jah Oil introduces importation and distribution of cement in their line of business to diversify and strengthen their operations. Are you a cement retailer? At the moment, Jah Oil is the biggest producer and distributor of cement in the country with the most competitive prices in the market. With a focus on sustainability and innovation, we are paving the way for a greener, stronger future. Trust in us to fuel your projects and lay the groundwork for success. We currently produce over 25,200,000 bags per year. As the largest cement producer in the country, Jah Oil also targets to export cement to the neighboring countries like Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, and others. Join us on our journey to shape a world where every drop of fuel and every bag of cement makes a difference. Together, we can build a brighter tomorrow.